welcome to another episode of Your Questions, My Answers, episode 25. These are shortened to be YQMA episodes, just to make your life a lot more confusing, as you'll see in some of the voicemails. People got the letters all mixed up, but that's another story. We're joined here again by Jesse from CigarJack.net and Brian Hewitt once again. So, guys, why don't we start off nice and easy, and why don't you tell us what you're smoking and what you got in the glass there?
Oh, I'm smoking a 601 Oscuro La Fuerza, and tonight I'm just drinking a little bit of water. How about you, Brian?
I've got a Rocky Patel vintage 1990 here, and as usual, I've got a latte in the cup. So that's me. How about you all?
I've got a Tatawahe Series P, the P1 size, the Corona Gorda. These are the Tatawahe affordable brand, if you will. They're mixed fill, and Jerry went on and on about these at one point in time, about how great they were and how affordable they were. And well, he got me hooked on them. And I'm pairing it up with nothing special, just a glass of iced tea. So that's that. And well, before we kick things off, segment 1 is sponsored by Dogwatch Cigar Radio. And with Bob and Dale, you're going to find thoughtful conversation, considered opinion, and a touch of insanity. And now that we've got all the small talk out of the way, why don't we get down to business, Brian? What do we have for question number 1?
Alright, question number 1 comes from Marcian via email. It says, "Hey Walt, hope all is well. It's been a while since last I've called on your expertise. However, I think the following question requires some open discussion. There has been an ongoing debate as to whether 65% or 70% RH beads are better for storing cigars. I think we all have come to the conclusion that it is simply a matter of personal preference. However, I have recently upgraded from my crappy 20-count humidor to a beautiful glass top 100-count humidor. I bought it because I plan to get into aging my cigars. I also bought 4 ounces of 65% RH beads to humidify my smokes. Now I'm hearing an overwhelming amount of the Brothers of the Leaf that say 70% is what is needed for aging. I don't have the ability, nor do I want the headache of storing my cigars in multiple humidors. What will happen as far as the aging process to my cigars long-term at 65% relative humidity? Am I simply wasting my time aging my sticks at 65%? Thanks in advice. Love the show. And thanks for including some Cigar Live's finest in the show." All right. Well, he asked for Walt by name, so I'll let Walt start this off.
Well, you know, there's a whole lot of I don't know in my response. I printed off, I don't know, a nice stack of papers at work, courtesy of my my Works LaserJet. Save one ink at home. I gotta love that thing. And well, you know what? The response to this is overwhelming. That everyone's different. From what I understand, people say, again, this ranges from source to source, that your temperature condition should be between 60 and 64%, or 60 and 64 degrees Fahrenheit, and the humidity level should be anywhere between 65 and 80% humidity. Now, depending on who you go to for your information, some people say it should be stored 65 to 70%, others say it should be stored 70%, others say 78 to 80%, and it goes on and on and on. And there's also a variation in the temperature. Some say, you know, you need to maintain that optimal 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 70% relative humidity. You know, others go up and down the spectrum. It's all over the place. As far as your RH beads go, if it were me, I don't know, and I were thinking about long-term aging, maybe 70%. I wouldn't have a problem aging my cigars at 65%. I just prefer the way they smoke that way. And I don't think there is a real answer. I mean, all the people that have background in cigars are given different advice for this topic. I printed off the resources from 7 or 8 websites, and all of them were different. You know, and then there's companies that say that, you know, even just storing your cigars, you know, for the purpose of smoking within a week or two, you know, a company such as Oliva, they recommend their Maduros be stored at 70 to 78% to preserve the natural oils. Now, I'm assuming that's what some of these other companies are saying as well. You know, the higher RH is just better for preserving the natural oils. But as far as what I do, I go with the 65 and 70% coolers. I use one of each, or actually 2 of one of the other. But so really, I don't know. I can't give you a definite answer. I think that if you wanted to concern yourself with one aspect, the most important thing when aging would be consistency. I would hold the humidor to a temperature and try to hold that, lock that down, you know, with plus or minus 1 degree maybe, and try to do the same thing with your relative humidity. You know, if your cigars are locked in at a certain temperature and relative humidity, I think you're going to get a much more even aging process. You know, if the cigars are going up and down, you know, you've got tobacco swelling, you know, expanding, contracting, and you got a lot of movement there, and there's just, you know, the possibility of problems arising are good when your levels are going up and down. So my advice would be try to be as consistent as possible, and since you already have the 65% beads, stick with what you have. You're certainly not going to get a definitive answer on the web, or at least I couldn't. So anyway, what about you, Jesse? Anything you can add to that, or bail me out here?
Yeah, I've actually been reading a little bit about this too, and it's just as varied. I can't remember the source where I read it, but it's somebody I trust, and he said there's a huge difference in variation. A lot of it ends up personal, you know, preferences. And I want to say, like, in some of the Cuban connoisseurs out of Hong Kong actually store at 60%. I can't remember where I read this, but it may not be, and maybe I'm wrong on that. But you know, I'm hearing variations. They were between 65 and 70, or almost anywhere between 60 and 80 in some places. But if you're staying with that range between 65 and 75, I think you're going to be okay. I mean, I personally like to keep mine in, you know, 65% to 70 range. Right now, with the weather so crazy, I'm lucky to keep it between 65 and 70. So, how about you, Brian?
Well, I would definitely agree with Walt's point about consistency. Just the swelling and contracting is just not going to be good for the tobacco. You're going to get splits and flaky ash and whatnot. You know, I would think that probably what you would optimally want to keep your cigars at would probably be something fairly close to, you know, for aging, something fairly close to what the, you know, the conditions of the place the tobacco aged in. And I'm not sure on the exact levels of humidity of, say, you know, the Dominican Republic or Nicaragua or whatever, but I know it's going to be 70 plus. So I'm thinking that I don't really age anything per se. I mean, I do have stuff that I just don't get around to smoking. I got plenty of that, but it's not because I'm intentionally aging it. I try to shoot for 65 to 70 for all of my stuff. I'd say that he was, you know, Marcian's concerned about, you know, not wanting to have another humidor, and he wants, I guess he's thinking that he wants to go to 70% now. You know, you could always get more beads. I think you can't, from what I understand, and, you know, makes sense, you can't have too many beads. You can pick up some 70% beads and put them in there, and then between the two of them, they're gonna, you know, maybe you'll wind up at, you know, 67.5 or 68 or something like that. But you know, it'll keep you in a solid range. So I mean, if that's a concern, just buy higher humidity beads, or just swap the beads either way. And you know, if you want to be at 70%, but I would think, you know, and I'm kind of guessing, and I'm kind of basing it on stuff I've read in the past, but I would say for aging, probably, you know, 70 and higher humidities is, I would think, would be the best way to do it. I mean, it's recommended by Oliva. It's how they age the tobacco. You know, it seems like that would make sense to me, but you know, I don't know. And I have read a lot of stuff in the past where people have all kinds of ideas of how to store it. And I've seen people that think 60 to 65% is right, and I've seen people that say 75 to 80% is right. I usually just try for shooting for around 70 and 70, somewhere in that range. If I'm somewhere close to that, I'm pretty happy without staying under that usually, a little bit. But I'm pretty happy with that. You have anything else to add, Walt?
Just on something you mentioned, the about using 70 and 65% beads at the same time. I bought, I guess it was about a pound of 65% beads at one point, and I had a little bit left, and I was going to mix the 65 with what I had with leftover 70% beads. But before I did that, I looked it up real quick, and unfortunately you can't mix the beads like that. I guess what happens is you get the two beads constantly fighting one another to maintain a specific humidity, and I don't know, all kinds of havoc is wreaked inside your humidor. I don't know what happens to the beads or anything, but from what I understand, you shouldn't do that. If Marcian wants to switch from one humidity to the other, maybe just pick up enough beads to cover your humidor. And also, if he's really serious about long-term aging, you may want to consider getting a dedicated humidor just for that. This way, he's not opening and closing the lid so often to grab a cigar out of there that's stored with his aged cigars. You're going to have temperature variation, relative humidity variation every time the lid opens. So he may want to consider getting a humidor that's going to be locked down and only accessed for maintenance. Maybe you want to add more moisture to the RH beads or whatever he decides to use, or rotate his stock, things like that, just general maintenance, and not have the lid opened up for the purpose of just grabbing a cigar.
Well, actually, I have a question, Walt. Now, you only run into that problem with the beads if you actually physically mix them together, right? I mean, if you had them, say, in separate bowls or separate pucks or whatever, then you wouldn't, or would you still would have that problem? I mean, is it kind of like the physical contact that's some sort of a chemical process, or are you just talking about the fact that they're fighting to maintain a certain humidity?
Well, you know what? I was more focused on the beads physically touching one another, because that's what I was going to do. I was just going to kind of dump them into one bag. But I don't know. You'd have to either ask Mark Neff or contact Dave from Heartfelt and see what he recommends as far as keeping them in different containers. They might balance out and just kind of meet one another in the middle, and maybe it is the direct contact that causes a problem. All right, Marcian, we well, as a collective, we're not 100% sure. The range is very up and down, so I guess the best piece of advice here is to just pick what you're most comfortable with and give it a shot. Try a couple cigars in, say, 4 to 6 months and see what you like. And if it's on par with what you want, stick with it. If not, try changing the environment a little bit. Maybe go to higher relative humidity, lower, whatever the case may be. Jesse, why don't you take us away with question number 2?
Okay. Alright, question number 2 is from Nick, from the email. First, I agree, Macanudo is a brand I could do without. I have yet to have a good experience with one. I almost never get good draw from them, and the one that I did tasted bland. The other brand I could do without is Baccarat. I have tried the 1679, and it was so light, if the smoke wasn't there, I wouldn't know I was smoking. I tried those once more. I also got some Sumatra Toros, and they had sugar dip tips, and they were bitter. Now on to my questions. You frequently refer to the smoke going up your sinuses. Could you explain that? Also, do you know somewhere where I can find out where some vents are being held? They sound like fun, and I want to check one out. Brian, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I think I have answers for both of those. The part I think you're talking about with the smoke traveling out of your sinuses, I don't remember the exact technical term. We need Colin Ganley of the Oxford's Gentlemen's Club to give us that precise term, but it's basically exhaling out through your nose, and the point of doing that is that it really enhances your ability to detect the flavors. That's mean, your nose is going to greatly impact what it tastes like, basically, and that's the reason for doing that. Personally, I don't do that just because my nose is a little on the sensitive side, so I wind up sputtering a little bit, looking like a jackass. So I just don't do that. But I mean, I try to get it close because I'm trying to work up to that at some point. But and yeah, I can tell it adds another dimension to the flavor. Just even getting close to doing that. I hope that's what you're talking about, because that's the answer I'm giving. As to the other one, with the finding out where the events are being held, I mean, there's a couple of options for you. First of all, check the website for your local shop, or just ask them. I mean, that may be the easiest thing, because if your local shop is where it's gonna be easiest for you to go to, if there is an event. The other thing I do is I go over to the Cigar Cyclopedia, and they have an events and promotions list broken down by state and different, basically different retailers. And I head over there and I check and see, which retailers I recognize, and if they're anywhere near where I'm at, then I know I can go there. And they're pretty good at keeping up to date. They're some states I've noticed when I'm scrolling through have a lot fewer than others, but if there's something going on, there's a pretty good chance that they know about it. I've been really impressed with them. What do you think, Walt?
Well, the Cigar Cyclopedia promotions and the Cigar Cyclopedia page that you mentioned is just an invaluable tool. I've used it so many times, and just as you mentioned, it breaks down the events state by state, and most of the events that are in the state are on there, at least from what I understand. Even the really small events that my local shop might hold end up finding their way on there, and I think it may be the sales rep that's doing the event that might be submitting it. Because my local shop is kind of small, and I don't see the owner doing something like that. But his events pop up on there, and it brings him a decent turnout. So definitely check out the list that Cigar Cyclopedia has. It's just it's a great list to have, and it's far enough in advance that you can glance over it, see what's going on this month, and maybe a little bit in the next month. So you can really plan ahead. And as far as blowing the smoke out of your sinuses, it's really difficult to explain how to do it, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. But essentially, all you want to do is you want to get the smoke to go through your sinuses, because a lot of times people come up with these crazy flavors. Well, it's not essentially the flavor; it's the smell. Most of your, or I shouldn't say most, but a lot of your taste comes through your sinuses. That's why if you're sick, you've got stuffy sinuses, you taste a whole lot less because you smell a whole lot less. So that's the benefit. As far as doing it, the best way I can explain it is to sort of pull the tongue back, towards your throat and block it off a little bit, and then just force air from the front of your mouth to the back of your mouth, and your tongue will kind of direct it up and out of your sinuses. Just kind of move the air around and exhale out of your nose, and it'll just kind of swoop around and down and out. Be careful not to inhale, and definitely don't swallow the smoke. That's easy to do if you've never done it before. And try it on a mild cigar first. You don't want to be grabbing a powerhouse cigar that's really spicy and then discover that you can do it and shoot a whole mouthful of smoke through your sinuses. You'll be paying for it for a long time. It'll really sting the first couple of times you do it on a heavy cigar. That's why you want to start on something milder. But that's all I got. What about you, Jesse?
Yeah, I was actually looking this up while you guys were talking. As far as it's called retrohaling, and if I'll send a link over to you, Walt, so you can post it. But Stogie Fresh Journal, he has some detailed information on that as far as cigar tasting, and a whole section on retrohaling. And definitely, I think doing that has actually helped me appreciate some of the milder cigars more and pick out some more of their flavors. I was always leaning towards stronger and stronger cigars, but now that I can pull some of these better flavors out of the milder ones, I've kind of backed up a little bit and really started enjoying some Connecticut shade and stuff like that more than I used to. And as far as events go, I think check out like Cigar Live. They have a really good event section. They've kind of slowly setting up so they have a person in each state that keeps track of the local events and some informal events that are going on. So it's a good place to check out and find some of those events. That's all I got.
How could I forget Cigar Live? How bad of me. Yeah, I was just thinking about the retro hailing. Yeah, I thought it had a longer name than that. Maybe it was just that. But the funny thing is I used to actually do that. I used to fake smoke cigarettes in college to meet smoking girls. But for some reason, I haven't been able to make that work with cigars. So I didn't really have too much to add to this. I just thought that was funny. I was just thinking about that. But it definitely. I mean, just getting the smoke back in your mouth, because I tend to when I'm tasting them, because I can't do something like that right now without really having spazzing basically. Just swirling the smoke around in your mouth is that's gonna. I mean, if you can't do that, try swirling the smoke around. But I mean, am I wrong to think essentially you're puffing a bunch of smoke in, and just instead of puffing back out of your mouth, you're just basically blowing air through your nose? And I think that is, I mean, that basically covers it. I didn't know that there was a lot of, maybe I'm incredibly dexterous or something, but I think not. Yeah. You have anything more to add to that, Walt?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, you're just taking a puff and try to force it out of your sinuses. There's not a whole lot of explanation to it. If you do try to explain it, it just gets really complicated, and no one really knows what you're talking about anyway. All right, well, that brings us to question 3, and this from here on out, we've got 8 entries for the contest, and we got lots of voicemail questions for you. So, with that said, take a quick listen to what Sin has to say in regards to his question. So, here we go.
Hey, Walt. This is Sin from the forums. I'm calling in about the contest, and I have a question, a couple of questions actually for you guys. The first question being, what initiated your current cigar smoking hobby? In other words, why did you start smoking cigars? I know for me, I went down to the Dominican Republic last summer and got to see how the cigars were grown, made, and all the time and care spent in doing so. I guess to follow up that question, what was your first cigar, and was it well received? Thirdly and lastly, do you really think the higher priced cigars tend to be better than the cheaper ones? I mean, I know you've done an excellent job of reviewing bargain cigars, but yeah, I was just wondering. So yeah, those are my questions. Thanks, guys, and keep up the great work.
All right. Wow. What initiated my current cigar hobby? Wow. I think basically what initiated it is a friend of mine and I were old enough to buy the stuff, so we decided to try it. And I mean, we actually had great fun. We used to drive from the little college town I was in and over to the Oregon coast, and we'd smoke really, really horrible gas station variety cigars, and we enjoyed the hell out of it, even though I thought they were harsh and basically tasted like ass. But but I mean, it was fun. We basically hung out, did the campfire thing, hung out, smoked cigars, got our throats really raw, and basically hightailed it back to go to class the next day. I mean, that was pretty much it. In terms of higher priced cigars, better than less expensive ones, well, it's kind of calling for a kind of a very sweeping generalization, isn't it? I have noticed that there are qualities about more expensive cigars that I appreciate, but at the same time, I've noticed that there are cigars that are much less expensive that manage to pull off a great smoke. I mean, I don't know that I would say just based on price tag alone that one cigar was better than another. In fact, I would say no, it's not. I mean, you look at, for example, the Oliva line of cigars. None of those are terribly expensive, and they're honestly better than a lot of really expensive cigars. I think that's pretty much all I've got to say. What about you, Jesse? What do you think?
Yeah, as far as the what got me into the hobby is my brother came into town to visit me, and we all went to a bar, and my brother and all his friends were smoking cigarettes, and we're in this dance club, and I was going nuts, and they actually happened to have a humidor, and I'd quit smoking cigarettes about 3 years before that, and I went up and picked out an 858 Natural Arturo Fuente, and I've been hooked ever since to cigars. So that's kind of what got me into smoking cigars. It kept me from smoking cigarettes again, and I loved it. So I mean, I'd had some backwoods and stuff like that before then, but this is the first time I really got into cigars. And as far as if the higher priced ones are better than less expensive ones, that's really, it's kind of interesting. They actually did a study recently. If you tell a person a bottle of wine costs $90, they'll enjoy it more than if you told them it costs $10. So, I think a lot of it has to do with perception. But for me, there's a lot of cigars in that $6 range that I'll smoke over a $10 cigar or $20 cigar. So it's really it's kind of smoke what you like. I mean, everyone has different tastes, and everyone's going to find something they like about a cigar better than somebody else. So, how about you, Walt?
Well, I think there are some phenomenal high-end cigars, $10 and over. But I feel the same way about, some of the affordable cigars, the bargain cigars that, under $4 a piece. There are just some phenomenal cigars out there that do really compete with the high-end smokes or the high-priced cigars. Just the price tag alone is no indication that it's a quality or just going to be a fantastic smoke. Taste is such a personal, subjective thing that, price tag alone shouldn't be your only influence there. You should really try a variety. I don't think that the higher priced cigars are always better than the lower priced cigars. So I don't know. I don't think that the higher priced cigars are the best or better than everything else. I think you'll find lots and lots of Inix cigars that are just as good, if not better, than some of those $10 and up cigars. And as far as what got me into the hobby, several years ago, my friends and I, we sit down and have a beer together and do the things that you do when you have a beer together. Just hang out, talk, just kind of shoot the breeze. And every once in a while, we pick up some cigars from the local Wawa or whatever gas station was close by. And no one really seemed to enjoy them all that much, but it added to the atmosphere. So every once in a while, we'd have a Swisher Sweet or something like that, and that was all that ever really came of it. It was just this occasional thing. And then one day, I got a phone call from a friend of mine that said, I did some work for this woman, and her husband was a cigar enthusiast, and he passed away a couple of years ago. I've got all these cigars, and would you be interested in taking some off my hands? So I said sure. I went down and picked up some cigars, and sure enough, the guy really was an enthusiast. He had all kinds of stuff, and at the time, I didn't even know it. I had no idea half the stuff that I had gotten. I smoked a couple of those, really enjoyed them. Later on, I found out exactly what they were, and was really impressed and surprised by what he had given me. And I started sharing the knowledge and letting him know what he had, and what had astonishingly high price tags on them. And we just kind of went from there. We started ordering 5-packs from JR's and Cigars International, and it just kind of evolved. And here I am now, a couple of years later, and totally immersed in the hobby altogether.
Hi, Walt. My name is Pete from California, and my question to you guys is, I currently store my cigars in a 125-count humidor, and I run 4 ounces of Heartfelt Industries 70% beads in there. When filled up, charge the beads, but when the beads are charged, humidity jumps up to about 75%, and then it slowly, gradually falls down to the 70, 68, and so forth. 75% is obviously a little bit too high, so my question is to you, how long do you suggest I would dry box the cigars in order to get the humidity down to make them more smokable? I smoke a lot of Maduro wrappers. And second question, what would I dry box the cigars in? I really appreciate you guys' website. Long-time reader, long-time watcher, first-time caller. This is Pete from California.
All right, that was question 4 from Pete. And, well, Brian, why don't you kick us off on Pete's question here? No, not typically. Now, he had mentioned that he purchased 70% heartfelt beads, and his humidor's at 75%. So I'm thinking that either his beads are saturated to the point where they can't absorb excess moisture in the air anymore, or his hygrometer is off. So the first thing you may want to look into is checking your hygrometer and calibrating it. And if your hygrometer is on par and your beads look okay, they're 80% clear, meaning that the other 20% is sort of like a milky white color, I'd get on the phone and give Dave from Heartfelt a call and see what he suggests. I know many people use this product and they don't have any problems. And when the occasional problem does pop up, Dave is just on top of things to get it taken care of. I've never once heard a bad thing about Heartfelt Industries. So definitely use that source of information and give Dave a call if your beads are actually the problem. As far as dry boxing goes, I really don't dry box cigars. I smoke them right out of the humidor. But a simple way to dry box them would just be to get a cigar box that's not paper coated on the inside. If you take a look at a box of Punch cigars, I guess they're plywood and they're laminated in paper. You'd want to get a box that doesn't have the paper on the inside, just Spanish cedar lined or Luan lined or whatever the box is actually made out of, and just drop your cigars in there, close the lid, and let them go for an hour. Maybe not an hour, maybe a little bit less. But I guess the idea is that the wood will slowly pull the moisture out of the cigar and bring it back down to the level that you want. You wouldn't want to shock it. Just as you said, Brian, you don't want a really quick shock, and you don't want to suddenly change the relative humidity. I think that'll cause problems with the cigar. But the benefits would definitely be less burn issues, a smoother draw, and cooler burning smoke overall if you brought the humidity down a little bit. And that goes from moving from 70% down to 65%, 65% down to 70%. Your draw problems will reduce the further down you go, but then you got to realize that once you get down too low, the oils in your cigar are dissipating, so you start to lose flavor. So you want to be in between 65 and 70%. And if you're running high, you may want to look into getting your overall humidor to come down, and not one cigar at a time. Although it is an option, I've heard lots of people doing it. I even remember Bob McDuffie from Dogwatch Cigar Radio mentioning that on occasion he'll take a cigar out of his humidor and place it on his kitchen counter, for a little while before smoking it, to just kind of settle it out. But I don't have any real specifics on it because it's not a practice that I'm active in. I don't dry box cigars. But Jesse, do you dry box cigars at all? Have any advice for Pete here?
As far as the humidity goes, between where you're reading at 75%, first thing I do is test the hygrometer and just make sure it's reading right. It sounds like, that's the problem I've got right now. I think a couple of mine are a little bit off, so I'm not too concerned as long as my beads look okay. And as far as dry boxing goes, I've never been into it. I mean, I know some people I've talked to on the other boards, they have a humidor, they keep a little bit lower, between 60 and 65, and they move the cigars they're going to smoke 2 or 3 days from now over to that humidor. But I don't know what I'm going to smoke 2 or 3 days from now, so I pretty much just grab what's ever in my humidor. It'll sit out on the counter for a few minutes before I smoke it, but usually within 10-15 minutes I'm smoking it. So I never really concerned myself with it.
You know, that's an interesting point. I really didn't give much thought into the amount of time you dry box your cigar for. You know, here I am thinking, well, you know, an hour might be a long time in a box that's dry, but you know, it makes sense to go for 2 or 3 days simply so that the cigar in its entirety stabilizes. Because really, if you're only leaving it in a dry box for an hour, then you're only going to begin to pull the humidity out of the exterior of the cigar. You know, the wrapper and maybe the extreme end of the extreme edge of the binder. You know, you're really not going to get into the filler there, and that makes it becomes even more of an issue when you're smoking these big, giant, fat ring gauge cigars that are, you know, 60 plus. You're never going to get the humidity out of that cigar, and in the course of an hour, it may take 2, 3, 4 days, you know, of just a dry box to bring the cigar down slowly in its entirety. But I never really gave any thought to that. That was an interesting point.
Yeah, typically the people I was talking with, they do it. They don't. It's not technically really a dry box. It's just a little bit lower humidity than what their storage is. I mean, these are guys that are aging cigars long term, and they keep it 70 to 75 for the long term, and when they want to smoke them, they take them down to 65. So that's more what I think, when I've heard references to the dry box, that's what they've been doing. So that's all I really got to add.
All right, Pete, I hope we didn't cause any more confusion than you already had. And it's time to take a quick production break. So if you give us just a second, we'll be back and, you know, we'll get segment 2 underway.
Alright, and we're back. This is segment 2, and we're sponsored by CigarMini.com, luxury cigar accessories and apparel. And get 5% off your next order by entering the code SR2008. First question, why don't you start us off there, Walt?
Hey Walt, this is Big River Jake, and I was just giving you a response for my question, your answers. Sorry I didn't get back to you on the last one. I thought you were going to have a lot of hits on that. But anyway, I digress. I guess your kind of cop-out question for what's my question, I guess a topic of discussion for y'all would be sort of the opposite of what the last one you just had. Which discontinued cigar would you like to see brought back? So there's that. And for my 2 cents, I guess the cigar I'd like to see brought back would be the Hoyo de Monterey Royal Sterling. I just thought it was an excellent cigar, but European-style cigars aren't popular, so it didn't sell, and it was taken out to make way for the tradition. Anyway, guys, like the work you do, keep it up. Bye.
All right, well, that was Big River Jake for question number 5. Brian, why don't you kick us off here with an answer?
Actually, I got kind of lucky here. I have the box sitting here. I collect most of the cigar boxes I buy. This is a XXO Maduro by Edward Nica, or Oaha Cigars. The company's gone. These are never coming back. But I got these for like $30 when my local shop was clearing them out, and I bought a couple boxes of them, and I've loved them. I mean, these cigars were probably 5 years old when I bought them, and the kind of the crystalline bloom from the oils all over the wrappers. It was just amazing. But they're long gone, so kind of out of luck there. How about you, Walt?
Yeah, I'm gonna touch on more of what Brian said about these cigars that you think may be discontinued. Jake, you mentioned the Hoyo de Monterey Royal Sterling being discontinued, and I read that cigar was being discontinued, and if you wanted them, you should buy them up. But on occasion, I see them at different retailers, and I think you can. Actually, I remember seeing them. I think I remember seeing them in the last JR catalog, and they were available by the box that way. So I don't know that they're actually discontinued. I think JR might be the sole retailer of that particular blend or brand. Same thing goes with the Padilla Hybrid. I posted a question over on Cigar Live about this rumor that I had heard about the Padilla Hybrid being discontinued. And Ernesto Padilla was kind enough to give me an answer, a definite answer, that yes, they were being discontinued and they were no longer going to be available. Well, a couple months go by, and then Ernesto Padilla says that you can get these again. You can buy them through Cigars International. Well, here Cigars International is the only retailer that carries these cigars now. So it is essentially their brand of cigar. Well, it's not really their brand of cigar. They're just the only retailer that carries it. So if you want it, you got to buy it from them. So it's not really discontinued anymore. But the one that I did really like that is discontinued is the Padilla Arcalis Corojo. I think they're limited edition 2006. As far as I know, you can't buy them anymore. I bought a bundle or two from Cigar Bid one time, and I really liked them. And eventually they rolled them out, and I don't think you can get them anymore. And then there was the Padilla Obsidian, which I think was supposed to be discontinued again. That was another limited edition year-marked brand that I think they're continuing on with. You can readily get these things on Cigar Bid pretty easily for a couple dollars a cigar. You buy them by the bundle. Again, here might be a brand that's only carried by Cigars International. But if I could bring one back, it would be the Padilla Arcalis, the Corojo limited edition cigar.
Hi, this is Jason Brown, and this is the question for the YQMA. My question is, if you're newer to cigars, are there any tricks when you're trying to pick out the different flavors in the cigars? Do you just have to try 3, 4, 5 of the same one? I guess what are the suggestions as far as trying to pick out different flavors in cigars? I know in Maduro, which is what I'm smoking mostly now, I get the chocolatey and cocoa and kind of stuff, but other cigars, you're looking for woody tastes and nutty tastes. Again, just what kind of tips do you have for trying to pick out the different flavors? Again, it's Jason Brown, and it's Jason Brown on Stogie Review Forums. Thanks. Bye.
Alright, that was question 6 from Jason Brown. As far as picking out flavors, a lot of that's the retrohaling helps pick that out, and we discussed earlier. And something else kind of helps me is how you pair the cigar. First time I smoke a cigar, I'm typically going to have it with just ice water, and then maybe later on I'll start matching it with something else. But that's kind of how I try to bring out the flavors of the cigar or enhance the cigar. That's really all I got. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, the part of unscrewing the spice containers is interesting. I never really gave any thought to that, but a little while back I remember seeing this wine tasting kit for developing your palate, and essentially it was these little bottles of different flavors. I guess they were concentrated flavors, and the idea was to try this type of wine and then smell this flavoring and then try to compare what the common flavorings were as opposed to what was in the wine, and see if you can kind of cross-reference them. And it was pretty interesting, and the thing I was reading was saying how you could apply it to cigars, how a lot of the flavors in wines are equally there in cigars, so it was a viable option. And it was interesting. I never picked it up. It was expensive. It was like $60, but I did find it interesting. I just never bought it. As far as picking out flavors, for me, it's that first cigar really is work. I mean, I'll sit down in a room. I might have a little music playing, but aside from that, the laptop is off. I don't have the newspaper in front of me. The TV is not on. It's I've got background music going. I'm sitting down at a writing desk with a pen in my hand and a notebook in front of me, and I'm really concentrating on the cigar. I'm taking notes. I'm easily filling up a notebook page. An 8.5 by 11 college ruled paper is easy to fill up when you do something like that. A lot of times, I'll go through a page and a half of just notes. Just jot down what I'm tasting and what I'm going through, and then I'll use that to reference when I smoke the second and third one. And I always drink just cool water with the first cigar, and then go from there. I might try to pair it up with some type of either microbrew or import beer, or coffee, tea, different things like that later on down the line. But the first one is always, it's work. I'm sitting down and I'm really concentrating on the cigar, and I'm taking a lot of notes. And in some aspects, it really takes the fun out of it. But once you do it, a few times, it becomes fun to just keep track of what you're going through and different things you're picking up in cigars. It's pretty cool, but it is it is a lot of work doing it that way. But another suggestion would just be to really take your time and try not to get distracted. Smoke slow, and try not to overpower what you're smoking with what you're drinking. So just take it easy on the really sweet drinks or the really bitter drinks or whatever you might be having, and try something neutral with your cigar, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add to that quick is look for like a wine tasting wheel or tasting chart, and sometimes they'll have flavors. They'll break it down like vegetal or creamy, stuff like that, and then it'll break down each category a little farther, and that can kind of help too when you've just got one of those flavors you just can't quite place.
I actually have one for cigars around here somewhere. I'll have to dig it up and post it on the site, but it works great. You get a broad range. You say it's spicy, and then there's subcategories, and you can fine tune it from there. And it works great. When you have something visual in front of you, so you can kind of follow the path of what you're tasting instead of giving it a generic term. I should really use that a little more often. I remember one time, or actually when we moved, my wife, she got this, it was this botanical candle, and it was in one of the bags in my trunk, and it was middle of summer, and the bag ended up falling over in my trunk, and the candle rolled out, and we unloaded all the bags, we moved in, and a couple of days later I start smelling these intense just aromas. Well, when I go around the back of the car, I pop the trunk over here, I got this candle that's just melted and all over the back carpet, and oh my God, it gave me such a headache. It was incredible. Now, kind of unrelated, but one example of those candles giving you a major headache, especially in a tight, confined space like a car when you got the air conditioner on and you got that stuff wafting out of the back seat and in through the trunk. It's those things can be pretty brutal. It reminds me of that movie Dirty Work, where Artie Lang's running around the drug dealer's house, putting the dead fish in the flower pot and in the cookie jar and everything else. But anyway, that brings us to question number 7 before we get way off topic. We're talking about dead fish here. We gotta get back on the cigars. Question 7 comes from Dave Hannafan, and well, take a listen.
Hey, Walt, this is Dave Hannafan. I'm calling to send in a question for your episode 26. My question is a challenge, really. What if you got a new cigar smoker and they're looking to try out a sampler? What would be the Stogie Review sampler that you guys would pick? I'm going to go off of Cigar International. The staff review tends to pick out 12 cigars. So you guys have to choose 12 cigars with a price range of, let's say, $30. What cigars would you pick for a new cigar smoker? And then to add on to that challenge, an intermediate smoker, if you were to pick 12 cigars, similar to the staff review that they do, what would be the Stogie Review cigars up to $50 for an intermediate smoker. All right, guys, I love your question, my answer session. And once again, it's Dave Hanifin. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
All right. Dave here's asked about a few samplers, like in the $30 range or the $50 range. Really, I haven't looked at too many samplers lately, but just kind of look around at some of the retailers. They are always offering new samplers. One thing I've noticed recently is somewhere's got Don Pepin Lancero samplers, which I've been meaning to pick one of those up because I've been kind of interested. I've been leaning more towards those small ring gauge cigars, but some places do have samplers geared out towards a newer smoker or intermediate smoker. And I'll check some of the forums because I know sometimes they'll do a newbie samplers where you can contact a guy who knows something a little bit more about cigars, and he'll be willing to sell you some cigars. So you might want to check that out. Walt, do you have anything else?
Yeah, it's funny. We got a couple of questions come in, and I started doing research on the aging cigars and the proper relative humidity and whatnot. And we've got a question coming up later that I did some research and some reading on. And I totally skipped over this question thinking, oh, this one's pretty easy. I'll just put a list together pretty quick. And now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, well, I should have put a little more effort into this because I didn't realize that he's looking for 12 cigars for a maximum price of $30. I mean, that's a really tight budget. That's under $3 a single. And I to be honest with you, I can't think of cigars that are under that price range for an intermediate smoker. So if I'm over the $30, Dave, I'm sorry. But and I'm not going to give you all 12. I'm just going to ramble off a couple. The Oliva Serie G in both Cameroon and Maduro. Buying them online, you could probably get them for under $3 a piece. Right around that neighborhood. You also have there's a brand called Havana Sunrise. It's I think the only place I found it was TNT Cigars. It's a Connecticut shade cigar. Excuse me. Mild and good smoke. I like it. Again, this is like a sub $3 cigar. Some more. The Holtz Brahmas were pretty good smokes. I don't know that they're available anymore. I know that they have these Brahma Blacks, but I think the original Brahmas were discontinued. Again, they were pretty good, and they were about $1.50, $2 a cigar. La Aurora makes a little, I forget what it's called. It's a little tubo. I remember picking them up a while ago for $1.50 a piece. They were like a petite Corona. They may have even been a petite Lancero. They were very small, but they were just like the regular size La Aurora Cameroons. Decent smoke at a very affordable price. The Perdomo Fresco is a mild cigar. They're, they can be a little rough, but again, these are cigars that are very affordable, and they're a good smoke for the most part. I mean, as far as bang for your buck goes, it's a deal. I mean, I think I paid $1.90 a piece for them at my local shop, so they're much less online. Let's see, to give you a couple more. The Flor de Oliva, the Maduro, the Corojo, and the Natural are all both very good cigars. And again, you can get them at the local level for under $2.50 a piece. So there's an option. Oh, that's 8. I don't know, Dave, you got me beat here. Maybe double up some of them cigars for an intermediate sampler. I don't know. That $30 price range is really hard to meet, especially when I neglected to do any research. And well, I'm gonna pass the buck here. Brian, why don't you help us out? Maybe focus a little bit more on the $50 price range for the kind of middle of the road smoker. Well, I just thought of a couple more. Maybe that'll spark your memory before I forget them. The Padron Londres and 2000 Maduros are both very good cigars. I think they'll fit they'll fit well in both a beginner smoker category and intermediate category. And I think even the seasoned cigar vet would appreciate those cigars. They're you'll hear a lot of good things about them, and they're affordable. The Gran Habano #1, the Connecticut. Oh yeah, I actually just smoked one today. It's a cigar that I'm smoking more and more of. I think I paid $3.50 for a Rothschild today. Again, it's a milder cigar. You've got the Oliva Serie O #4, which is about $3.50 at the local level, which is also, well, that's more along the lines of maybe an intermediate cigar smoker. But those are the three I just came up with, so maybe that sparked something for you, Brian.
Yeah, I was just gonna break in. I got a couple here. I was looking through some of the reviews on my site quick, trying to refresh my mind here a little bit. Couple like I think it's the Alec Bradley makes it, the Occidental Reserve. It's pretty inexpensive, and along with the Perdomo Lot 23s, they're not too bad. I think my local shop has them cheaper than most, but I think I picked the Robustas up for like $3.50 a stick. So those aren't too bad to smoke either for that lower price range.
Yeah, when I was jotting down notes as you guys were talking about cigars because they reminded me of other cigars. The one I'm actually smoking is a bargain level cigar, the Tatawaga Series P. They come in boxes of 31. For if you shop around, you get them for under $100 a box. So that'll put them, right in the $3 range. There's the Perdomo Lot 826, which is a bundle brand by Perdomo, obviously, and it's mild, and they're very inexpensive. Another Alec Bradley cigar, which I really like, is the Havana Sungrown, but they're a little bit more than the Occidental Reserves. And finally, the Fuente 858 Maduro. They're modestly priced, and I enjoy them. And I feel lured into a trap here. We keep saying, this is good for the beginner smoker, this is good for the intermediate smoker. We're not saying that mild cigars are for the beginner smoker and fuller body cigars are for the intermediate smoker. I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of rambling off, what I think someone would like, and I'm just kind of giving them a generic label. Ryan, you want to elaborate on where we might be coming from as far as saying intermediate and beginner and seasoned cigar smoker? Yeah, it's funny. The more we talk about this stuff, the more cigars keep popping into my head, and I'm sure we're well over, the 24 cigar, sampler here. But the Camagüey cigars come to mind. They come in a couple different wrappers. They're inexpensive, but I don't know what's going on with that company. I've been hearing odd things like they're not shipping their cigars. There's back orders that aren't being fulfilled. And so I'm not really sure about what's going on there. I don't know whether someone's just not paying their bills and they're saying that they're not getting their cigars or what the case is. But anyway, we've rambled off lots of cigars. We didn't really give you an official sampler, but I don't know, maybe a mix and match of everything mentioned. And I think we stuck as close as possible to that $30 and $50 price line. So Dave, I hope that answer was sufficient and we helped you out a little bit without really confusing you, which we probably did anyway. But anyway, that leads us into question number 8. This is the final question for segment 2, and this one is from JB.
Hey guys, this is JB from the Fan Forum. I have a little bit of a problem where lately everything I've been smoking has just not been doing it for me. It stinks too because I just got over a sinus infection, and beforehand everything was tasting great. So I was just wondering if you guys have had this problem where just no cigar is doing it for you, and I've been smoking cigars that I normally like as well. So if you guys have had this problem, if you've done anything to overcome it, or if you just give it time, try something you really like, try something you don't like, up to you guys. Any help would be grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm quite in the same boat as you, just taking a break from them. I've had to do that a few times, especially when I get sick or sinuses start acting up. I just lay off the cigars for a little while. Yeah, that's about all you can do. Walt, got anything to add?
Yeah, I'm falling right in line here. I think the best thing to do is take a little time off, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and you should come back and you'll be amazed at the flavors that you're picking up after taking a little break. But I think that it's only going to cause more problems if you try to shortcut it, maybe like saline solution or some kind of antihistamine to open up your sinuses. I think that while that might be a quick short-term fix, I don't think that would solve the problem overall. I think you'd be constantly taking hits of saline solution in the nose to try to open things up enough that you start to pick up the flavors in the cigar again. I think the best thing to do is maybe just take a little bit of a break and come back, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. No, I think that sums it up, really. But before we get out of here, how are your cigars doing, guys? My Tatuaje Series P is doing good. It's getting pretty short. I took the band off. I'm at about an inch left. I'm in need of another glass of iced tea, but aside from that, I'm really happy with the cigar as usual. It's got nice, rich flavors, and it's a surprising cigar. I mean, it really performs for being a budget cigar that's mixed fill. I mean, it's and I don't have the traditional problems with mixed filled cigars with this one. Where you get bits of tobacco in your mouth because of the mixed fill, and you cut it and you get tiny little pieces of tobacco and stuff like that. I don't have anything falling off the cigar onto the table. I'm not picking little bits of tobacco off my tongue. It's smoking really well. I think it's a great cigar for $3. What about you, Brian? How's your Rocky Patel Vintage 90 doing?
Yeah, I actually just set mine down a few minutes ago. Nice, spicy, full-bodied cigar. I mean, the 601 Oscuro makes me think of a steak dinner I had not too long ago with like steaks and like a black pepper cream sauce. It's just a little bit of cognac in it. They're just fantastic. Full-flavored, full-bodied cigar. So, nice way to end the night.
Hey, well, this is Chris calling overseas from Japan. I'm on a military installation right now. I don't know if I made the deadline for the contest. The time difference is pretty insane out here, but I'll ask the question anyway. My question is, with the new issue of Cigar Aficionado that came out listing the top cigars for 2007, I've seen already a lot of attention paid to it. Everybody has comments on it, and everybody has ideas about it, and it seems to have really garnered some interest from a lot of people. But I'm starting to wonder, even with these new sites, a lot of the new cigar websites and forums that have been popping up lately, is Cigar Aficionado that still hold the same amount of weight that it once did? Like, do people still consider them the first and foremost authority on cigars, or are people now going to the internet? And where do you guys see the magazine going? Because they recently started a video section on their site, and their site's been pretty modernized with the new blogs and videos and everything like that. But do you still see them as a powerhouse that they're known to be in retrospect over the years? Thanks for listening to my question, and I hope that it gets answered on YQMA. Later.
All right, well, we're back, and you just heard Chris from Japan, and his question is in regards to Cigar Aficionado, and essentially, do they still have the same clout that they once did? And well, it's amazing. There's just so much. There's just so many sources for information out there that it's hard to pick one and say, this is the upper echelon of the news and resource field. So I think people have a lot of options now, and maybe Cigar Aficionado is kind of coming down a little bit. You've got Rich Perlman that puts out a fantastic news service daily, it's one that I read quite a bit. Now, I stay away from Cigar Aficionado, not because I don't like the magazine or anything. It's just that it's just not something that I like to read. I don't like to read the Cigar Aficionado magazine. It's too thick. It ends up taking too much time. A lot of advertisements for a lot of things that I can only wish I could afford. But I think that there are lots and lots of people out there that read that magazine and believe everything they say. So I think if Cigar Aficionado says one thing or another, that there's going to be a whole lot of people out there that follow it to the T. I mean, they've been around for a while, and they are extremely popular, both on the web and in the mail publication. So yeah, Chris, I think Cigar Aficionado is still a very big source for information, and there's a whole lot of people that'll vouch for him. What do you think, Brian? What do you think of Cigar Aficionado and their magazine?
Yeah, I pretty much use it. I use it as a guide for what I'm going to review on my site sometimes. I'm trying to find something new, because if they're talking about it, other people are going to be looking for information on it. And they've got one of the biggest reaches as far as the cigar magazines go. I think they talk less about cigars than they used to, but they're still definitely one of the biggest, cigar publications out there. I know there's some out there that are starting to rival them, but I still think, Aficionado for a lot of people is the go-to magazine on cigars. And so I don't take their reviews too much to heart, because they're kind of hit and miss, because sometimes they've tasted some stuff in them that I've never picked out of a cigar, but for the most part I do use them as a kind of a guide to see what other people are talking about or going to be looking for, so I can kind of get an edge when in the search engine results for reviews on my site. How about you, Walt?
Well, it's a great it's a great tool. And unfortunately, I don't use it as much as I really should, as far as optimizing our reviews based on the popular trend. But I definitely think that they are a force to be reckoned with out there. They are the major cigar publication, and they've got tons and tons of readers and diehard followers, and they're just they're the big boys on the block. But Jesse or Brian, you mentioned that it's not a magazine that you read cover to cover. Are there any particular cigar magazines that you will read cover to cover? For instance, I really like the European Cigar Cult Journal. My subscription just lapsed. I need to renew it again this year. But that's a magazine I pretty much read cover to cover, because it's just jam packed with really interesting information, and I just like the way it's written. It's geared towards the European market, and I just like the writing style. It just seems, more elegant. It just seems to have like a more elegant feel to it. But is there any particular magazine that you will read cover to cover? You just can't put it down?
I've actually been meaning to subscribe to European Cigar Cult. I haven't done that yet. I try to pick up a copy when I can find it. Actually, I really don't read the magazines as much as I should. Pretty much I go around to websites, look what people are talking about there more than anything. So I go, hey, I'll take that magazine with me and I'll read it, but 9 times out of 10 I'll sit down on my computer and, catch up with a cigar blog. So I've got my RSS reader's probably got, between blogging and cigar feeds, I've probably got 300 RSS subscriptions that I have to go through, so that takes up most of my time.
Well, that really trumps my my about 10 RSS feeds. I need to get in the loop there. You obviously stumbled across something that I need to look into. But as far as the Cigar Press magazine goes, I haven't gotten a subscription to that yet. I do plan on getting it. I read the inaugural information on Cigar Live, and it seemed really, really interesting. But I just I've been so tied up with lots of other things, I just haven't gotten around to it. But Anyway, that's that as far as the magazines are concerned. That brings us into question 10. This one is from John, so take a quick listen.
Hey, Walt. I had a question for you guys for the Your Questions, My Answers segment. I'm aware that a lot of humidifiers on the market use a chemical in them called propylene glycol. And from what I've read, most humidifiers are actually pre-charged with this stuff, and they help keep the humidity regulated. When you add in the water, they regulate it to like 70%, which is usually advertised. And I want to know the safety of this stuff. I've been reading up about it, but I haven't really found any information regarding the safety of propylene glycol being vaporized into your humidor and what it could do to your cigars and what it could do to be smoking it if it's actually in your cigars. So my guess is that not only would water be evaporating, but so would the propylene glycol into the air inside your humidor. But just wanted to know if you guys knew anything about it, and that's about it. Thanks. See ya.
You know, I initially started using it when I first started smoking cigars and storing cigars, and I immediately stopped. And the reason being was my boss at the time was a cigar smoker, and you know, he was telling me, oh, you know, that stuff's like antifreeze. How can you use that in your humidor? And right away I'm thinking, oh, you know, this can't be good. And I stopped using it, and you know, I never really touched this stuff since. You know, and then this question came up, and you know, I started doing some research and came across this Wikipedia article, and it's amazing how much stuff that this stuff is in. You know, you've got solvent for food coloring. You know, as you mentioned, Brian, sexual lubricants. It's used in medication, cosmetics, toothpaste, mouthwash. It's used in electronic cigarettes to make the water vapor, you know, the fake smoke look more realistic. It's used in hand sanitizers, antibacterial lotions. And as far as the safety is concerned, the FDA deems it as safe enough. And the exact quote is, generally recognized as safe for use in food, cosmetics, and medicines. So I don't think you're going to have much problem if it does transfer to your cigars. And while we were talking a little bit off camera before we even started the show about this was, you know, we had mentioned that, you know, we've all got these little jars of propylene glycol jelly. And, you know, if they sit for a while, they dry out and they get really tiny. And so it doesn't appear as though you're getting a lot of vapor that's coming off the propylene glycol. You know, you add water to it, and this stuff just swells back up, and it looks like nothing is missing. So I don't know that it's actually getting out of the container and into your cigars. I mean, I assume there's a small transfer, but I would think that it's very minimal. And even so, they say that if you use it in your fluorofoam units, that it'll actually clog the unit over time. And you can't use it in RH beads because the propylene glycol will actually saturate the bead and more or less clog it. So I would think that if it's going to clog that stuff, it's not being released, it's not getting out. So I would think overall you're pretty safe. I mean, what does it say here for the lethal dose? One study, feed contained as much as 5% propylene glycol over a period of 104 weeks, and they showed no apparent ill effects. So that's quite a bit of propylene glycol in the feed over, you know, a long period of time, and there's no ill effects. You know, they say if it's used intravenously, that's about the only time you're going to see a fatality from it. But again, this is a Wikipedia article. It's not 100% factual, I'm sure. You know, there's probably some mistakes throughout, but you know, the general consensus is if they manufacture this stuff geared directly for cigars and food additives and things like that, I don't think that it's going to be a safety issue, and I don't think you'll have any problem using it at all. What do you think, Jesse?
Yeah, while you guys are talking, I don't have too much to add here. I was looking it up quick, and I did find one article about it here that it is actually not used in antifreeze. People confuse it with diethylene glycol, which is a little different chemical, and that's actually what's used in antifreeze. And yeah, that stuff will, yeah, you don't want to use that on your cigars. But with all the other stuff they're using it on, I'm not too worried. I mean, I'd be more worried about it in the cake mixes and the salad dressings and the salad and the soft drinks. Heck, popcorn has it, so I mean, I really wouldn't be too worried about it.
Well, John, we did a little research and came up with a lot of interesting information. Actually, check out the article on Wikipedia, and I don't think you're going to have any problems using it. And that is our 10th and final question of the evening. And that just brings us to some just generalized banter. And at this point, Jesse, what do you have going on with CigarJack.net? You know, in the coming months, the coming year. You know, do you have anything big in the works, or are you planning on making any changes? You know, in the future.
We touched on that a little bit last time, but one of the big things I'm planning right now is in March here, coming up on 1 year anniversary, and I'm working with a vendor or a manufacturer actually to have some pretty big prizes for a prize for the contest that I'm planning to have in March. So be sure to check that out. It's going to be well worth it. So it's really all I got going on is right now is just I'm doing a lot of back end stuff, trying to fix up. They added some new features to WordPress. I'm trying to incorporate those a little better. So I got 400 some posts I got to go through and edit to add some things to. Otherwise, that's really all I got going on right now.
Well, that was quick. The MQYA question this time around. Well, it's I really like the turnout of this call in and give me a question. So I'm going to do that again this week. I will create a question for next week, but again, call in with your voicemail question through the Skype network, my voicemail, or record yourself and email it to me. I got one of those entries actually this time around, and you'll be entered to win an Arganese sampler prize. And I'm also going to give away something else for the question. So we'll do if you call in for an audio question, you'll be entered to win the Arganese sampler pack, and maybe I'll give away a puck. Actually, we're going to be giving away a puck a month for every month in 2008. So we got a couple of things to give away. So I like the idea of giving something away to the people that call in with audio questions, and we'll ask a little harder question, and we'll give something away for that too. But the winner of the Arganese sampler pack this time around is JB from our fan forums. So JB, if you shoot me your information, I'll get your Arganese sampler pack on the way, ASAP. And again, to leave a voicemail question for episode 26, you can either use Skype for free and send a voicemail to WWhite72082. You can email me your MP3 of your audio question at walt@stogiereview.com, or you can give me a call at 610-572-2636 and leave me a voicemail. And please remember that this is a voicemail service, so if you're actually trying to get a hold of me, you're going to have to leave a voicemail either way, unless I'm physically in front of the computer with Skype running. So to the people that were looking to get a hold of me that way, just leave me a voicemail. I'll try to get back to you. But as far as the question is concerned, just leave me a voicemail. I'll get to it, and just as we did in this show, I'll play the questions. And I was really happy with the turnout. It was great. We got 8 questions. We barely had to do any reading at all. Maybe in the future we can get to where we only include a couple of written questions, but we'll see how it goes. I was really happy with the turnout. So with that said, Brian, why don't you take us on out of here?